So in this lesson, we are going to take the text that we just read to GMO or not to GMO, and we are going to take the information here and practice how to get it onto our note catcher here. So let's not forget our central research question is, how do GMOs influence our access to healthy foods? So you're looking for information on how GMOs either increase our access to healthy foods or how they decrease our access to healthy foods. Now we're going to scan just the first two paragraphs of the text. We're going to try to see if there is a single sentence in that section of the text that helps us to address the central research question. Remember, we just went over quoting accurately. So we're going to try to see if we can find something that comes directly from the text that matches what we're looking for. So I'm skimming and scanning because we already read the text. And right here, I see that it says GMO crops may produce more food for human consumption. Jaffe says GE crops are not the primary solution to food security in developing countries, but they could be helpful. So when we think about quoting accurately and pulling quotes, we know that this increases our access to healthy foods. So we're going to take this information and we're going to simply put it here. Now you don't want it to be highlighted in yours, so you want to press none. And because it is quoted information, you want to make sure that you put your quotation mark here. Because it is a double quote, it gets a single quotation mark, and then we get a double quotation mark. And that is how you pull the information from one place to the next. And so having evidence, though, isn't enough. Though the evidence is good, we know that this increases our access to healthy food. However, based on this quoted evidence, how do these GMOs increase our access to healthy foods? Take a second and kind of think about that answer. Okay, so you should have read GMO crops may produce more food for human consumption, and you should have thought to yourself, well, if GMOs increase our access to healthy food because they can produce a lot more food and help prevent starvation. And in case you are wondering where that second part came from, so GE crops are not the primary solution to food security, but they could be helpful. And food security means your ability to eat. So as you can see in this box, we have not just our quoted accurately information, our evidence, but we also answered the question of, well, how do they increase access to healthy foods? So as you're reading, you'll find out pretty soon that sometimes there isn't a single sentence that addresses the research question, but there is information across the paragraphs of the text that addresses a research question. What you'll want to do is paraphrase the relevant information that addresses the question into a sentence or two. For example, if I am skimming through the why say no section, it says there are just a lot of question marks, and I think many people have registered the concern that we need to have more answers before we move forward on having it commercially available at this point in time. It also says that certain farming practices utilizing GMO crops are unsustainable. And then it also says that the impact on the environment may include the development of superweeds or harmed species that are not pests. So obviously, why say no? We know that this information is easily going to be put in our decrease access to healthy food section. So we're going to scroll down. And if we were to put together that information, we would say that although GMOs make crops resistant to pests, they can also harm other species that are not pests. Now, one more time, when we're looking at this, they are talking about farming practices and the impact that it has on the environment. And it also talks about these super weeds and how they harm species that are not pests. And so that's where we get, now they make the crops resistant to pests. So yeah, that's cool. The pests aren't hurt, but it talks about other harm that can be done. And so we took what we learned in this section and we paraphrased it and put it here. So that means we still have to answer the question. Now, don't stop at just giving the evidence. Yes, it is great to know that these GMOs harm other species that aren't pests, but you still want to answer the question of, okay, well, how does that decrease our access to healthy foods? What does harming species have to do with decreasing our access to healthy foods? And you want to think about the fact that GMOs, that modifying crops can decrease our access to other foods that are harmed by GMOs. So we may get an increase in some foods, but some foods are harmed by those GMOs. And so we actually will get a decrease in some of our foods. So what you are going to do is take a couple minutes to work with a partner in a small group or by yourself, depending on what your teacher says. And you're going to finish looking through the text that you already read, and you're going to try to find a few more pieces of evidence and answer that evidence inside of your note catcher. So in the increase our access to healthy food section, as you can see, we have a couple more answer and evidence pieces. You're just going to fill out the next maybe one or two, and then you're going to scroll down to the decrease our access to healthy foods and fill out maybe the next one or two sections for answer and evidence, just like we did here. If you have any questions or if you need further clarification, please count on your partner or group members or reach out to your teacher.